Hello again, this is UML Operator. All right, welcome back. This is the second part of a multi-part series on building a project in Sparx Enterprise Architect. So we're taking what we've learned in the last several sessions. We've learned about the tabs in Sparx, the ribbons to start a project. We have built the skeleton framework for our project, and we're going to step through a life cycle in an agile manner, so it's going to be iterative in implementing this project. And we'll talk about this project as we get into ideation. However, in order to start a project, we first need to build the framework that we're going to deliver the project in, and we need to agree on the methodologies that we're going to use in delivering this project. So in this session, we're going to focus on ideation and needs assessment. So ideation is just brainstorming, and needs assessment starts the gap analysis between what the current mode of operation is for the client stakeholders and what the desired future mode of operation they wish to achieve by the end of the project. So let's get started with ideation. It's a blank diagram. I'm going to open it up. I'm using the requirements toolbox, which we all learned about. All right. So ideation refers to the purpose of generating, developing, and refining ideas or concepts. It involves coming up with new or creative solutions, innovations, approaches to problems and challenges the client stakeholders may have. Ideation is always, in my opinion, a collaborative process that encourages brainstorming and thinking outside the box. So we're just going to dump assumptions into ideation. We're going to brainstorm together, and we're going to start building the foundation of the scope necessary to fulfill the client stakeholders' project or delivery objectives. Now, I have to preface by stating that the goal of ideation is to provide a wide range of ideas without judgment or evaluation. So anybody's allowed to put any idea, no matter how wild it is, out to the team here, and we're going to collect those ideas and build around those. This is a very important exercise in requirements engineering, particularly requirements solicitation. Now, I have to tell you before we get started, we're going to drag and drop a requirements element in here. We're just going to take the current name of it. We're going to double click it, and we're going to open it up, and we're going to look at types. So as I had stated, we're just dumping assumptions here right now. You may not see the type assumption. I created this. This is not canned in Sparx, all right? So you notice over on the right, it is now stereotyped as an assumption. And we can come in as we're going through the life cycle, and we can change this to functional requirement, a UI requirement, non-functional requirement, or what have you. So how did I do this? If you remember, we just go to settings, we go to model types, we go to general types, and we get this dialog box that pops up. You go to requirements, and I simply added a new requirement type called assumption, and you can explain it in further detail. I went ahead and gave it a weight of 1, and we're just going to go from there. But I wanted to preface, because some of you may be in your tool, your Sparx Enterprise platform, following along and going, okay, I don't have that. So now you know how to create an assumption if you want to. It's optional. You don't need it. You can drop this in here and do what you want with it. All right. All right. To be transparent, I just noticed that I'm locked from moving this horizontally and vertically. And as I told you in that video, it's deals with helpers. I have HV lock turned on. So if you ever make that same mistake, always remember to turn this off when you're done with HV lock. So now I should be able to move it. Oops, I double clicked it. Right now I should be able to move it around. Perfect. All right, I always like to size these around 200. This is good enough right here. And then 45. So if you got bar down here, it tells you what the size is. I just know automatically. So I'm going to save, get rid of the asterisk because I want to copy this. So I'm hitting Control C and I'm hitting Control, Shift, and V. All right. And I'm going to do this about 10 times. So all I'm doing is Control Shift V. And you can see over on the right, I'm copying this requirement that I just set up with an assumption stereotype in here. And now what I'm going to do is left justify. I'm in the layout tab. I'm going to left justify and space them down. So we're ready to start brainstorming. All right, another thing we need to do before we get started is manage our technologies. And this is optional, it's totally up to you. But if you remember from the specialized tab under technologies, you can manage technologies. These are the tools when you're using the toolbox and you're bringing in diagrams and so on. These are the technologies we're going to use. So everything I've got enabled. So I'm using, of course, the basic UML1. I'm using data engineering. I want Archimate in here. I want BPMN, business process modeling notation, business rules. We're going to start talking about rules and constraints in the project. Entity relationship diagrams, ERDs. When we get into data, of course, I want the glossary, must have for ubiquitous language, especially if you're utilizing domain-driven design, DDD. Project management, of course. SPEM, this is software process engineering. I like to have this on the side when we're talking about methodologies and we need to have that conversation. TOGAF, the Open Group Architecture Framework, web modeling, whiteboarding, and wireframing. I think these are the things that I absolutely need for this project. You can certainly look across the other technologies and add those in as well. We're going to go ahead, hit OK. And now we've limited the amount that shows in the drop down, and it's still a lot, right? And when we're creating diagrams and packages, we've limited the amount that we're subject to for either searching or finding and using in our project implementation. You can always turn on and off technologies at any time. Again, going specialized, technologies group or panel, hitting technologies. Here you can turn things on or off and manage them the way you want. Now, as we get started in ideation and needs assessment, we might want to bring in some visual aids to help. So in the ideation folder, I often, or you can do it down in needs assessment or both, I often create a package called UX, let's see, ideation. Since we're in this namespace, let's go ahead and cover that. Now in this, I can use extended user interfaces. We're going to do that. I can give it a name, just call it simple. So I have simple, and then when I bring it up, when I launch this diagram, I'm going to get the user interface tools if we have to have a conversation here. Let me close this. In this diagram, this namespace or package UX ideation, I want to create another diagram. This one is going to be for wireframing, and it's going to be for web page wireframe. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now I get the toolbox for this type of diagram. All right. So this one's simple, just has a very simple UI component. If we get into a screen conversation, this one's a little bit more complex. It gives me a web page that looks more real to a browser, and that we can paint, we can write requirements. You'll see all that in a moment, or shortly, I should say. The way things are going, moment might be a few minutes away, but there'll be chapters down below that'll help you get to the sections that are important to you that you want to watch or rewatch. Now, I usually like to think about and talk about data, information, intelligence. We're going to create another package in here in ideation, and we're just going to call it information. Intelligence, anything that you want. And we're going to use extended data modeling. Now, non-technical stakeholders don't want to scare them away. I just like to have this over on the side. It gives me some tools so I'm able to brainstorm on the side or with them on information intelligence data, because user experience is especially dynamic is accessing data. So I'm going to put UX at the top, information, and then I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I think we're ready to get started. Conference room is filling up with people, right? And you're ready to start getting everyone to brainstorm. Now, don't get carried away. Sparx is extremely powerful. We're going to open the first requirement or assumption. You can write war and peace in this notes section. You can get very carried away in what you write here. We're just ideating and collecting assumptions, okay? So keep it short. You're probably in the very beginning, because we're working in an iterative life cycle, we're just filling this field out. If you want to collect more notes, go ahead if you've got the time. I would not spend more than 5 minutes on each ideation subject. You just tell the folks if they're getting carried away that we'll parking lot this one and we'll come back to it. All right. So the first one is content management. The client stakeholder is telling us they're moving away from an older website. It's very static and they want content management. Whether you go content management system, solution, whatever you want to put here, we're just brainstorming, okay? Now, one trick in requirement solicitation is just to get everyone to rapid fire. So you go around the conference call, the Zoom call, whatever collaboration method you have. You can go in alphabetical order or left to right or right to left. But you take one person at a time and you go, shoot, give me in one sentence what you want. So if we go to properties, you see in properties, we've got name, we wrote content management system. So go to the next one. The default is the requirement name of requirement 1, as you can see through these. And we're just going to rapid fire ideas from the stakeholders on the call or in the room. So the next person might say user experience. All right, don't let anybody interrupt. They might pop up, well, that's what content management is about. No, don't stop anyone, okay? Keep going. Another person may say, performance is an issue. So we're just going to write one word, performance. Another person might say, especially the finance person in the room, cost effective. Now, cost is an interesting term. It can be ambiguous because cost can mean dollars. It can mean labor. It can mean effort, schedule. So we're just going to write down the next one. It must be cost effective. And we're going to keep going. Now, I initially filled the screen with 7 or 8 elements in here, 7 if I know how to count. And you get down to the last one. You want to reuse this as a pattern. So I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to hit Control Shift V. I'm just going to copy it just as it is. I'm going to move it to the top. Maybe I want to go 10. So let's see here, one more, right? So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. All right, so one more. And then what I'm going to do is go to layout. I'm going to left justify and then space them, right? Then I'm going to create another one. And I'm going to add it at the top because I want to keep these 10. So I got my alignment on, so it's easy to see alignment. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to Control C this one, and then I'm just going to create 9 more. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, then I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to left justify or left align, and then I'm going to space them down. Look how fast it is to create requirements. Or I should have said elements. These aren't requirements, these are assumptions. We're just using the requirement element. Could have used the feature element and tagged it as an assumption. Could have used other elements, all right? So another thing you might want to do, if you recall, is number these. And the cool thing here is if you forget, well, how do I number things? If you recall, we have this little light bulb up here, find command. We're just type in numbering and we start, I'm not even going to finish. It's already giving me an idea. So I go into manage. I see manage here. Oh, there it is. Options, level numbering. And now you have numbers referenced. So we've got 20 assumptions or requirement elements that are in here for us to play with. Okay, so you can always turn it off, find, numbering. You go back up here. I'm done with numbering. I can turn it off, right? I want to turn it on, numbering, manage, turn it on, all right? So I love this feature. You're going to use it a lot in the beginning. After a while, you're going to learn what tab and ribbon that is on that you saw in those previous videos on Sparx tabs and ribbons. And just so anybody watching the video is going, well, how do you do it without that find feature? If you remember the design tab, we're talking about packages, we're talking about manage, and there it is. All right. So there you go for anybody that's commenting down below. Show us. All right. And you didn't watch the video on the tabs and ribbons. All right. We've done 10 assumptions right now. And we're going to go ahead and stop. I'm going to move these other 10 over here to the right because I'm the requirements engineer and I'm doing elicitation, and we have solution engineers, system engineers, whatever, application architects, maybe even a couple of developers in the same room with the client stakeholders. And we're starting to get an idea of what the scope is for this project. We didn't ask the client to write a scope statement or, give us any more detail. We got a lot out of this session here in just a few moments. All right, so we're seeing some common denominators here. We're seeing the notion of a content management system. Someone wanted the ability to do types and subject areas. That sounds like it's relevant to content. Articles, there's a noun, right? That's relevant to CMS or content management. Bookmarks, there's another one as a form of intelligent. Here's the word article in here, and I misspelled have. All right, and acronym library. Wow, we're seeing a lot to building the content, the CMS, as far as our, RFI, RFP needs assessment, so on. So we're seeing integrate. This is an interesting one. We're seeing integrate with a work management platform. So something exists already would be questions that you would ask during this exercise. And now we're starting to form an idea of what the scope may be for this project to help us form our gap analysis between the current mode of operations for the client stakeholder and the future mode. So we can start talking about the needs assessment. But we're going to go back here because we've given ourselves some visual aids that we can play around with. All right. So in visual aids, we have a simple. So we're going to want to use this diagram and toolbox as we're asking these questions. All right. So we're going to go back to needs. I'm going to close needs assessment. We're going back to ideation. Got an asterisk here. Always want to hit save in case the power goes out and you don't want to lose everything. So I'm a Control S and save junkie. I do that automatically. So I need to remember to tell all of you. So we'll get back to UX, UI, ideation in a moment, but we've got it up ready to go. But the first thing we want to do is draw relevance, traceability, but relevance. Don't get hung up on traceability between these elements, because this element here is relevant to this element. So how would you draw that relevance? If you go over in the toolbox, you've got requirements, relationship, you've got aggregation, association, implements, dependencies, and trace. You certainly could say, hey, this requirement here traces, or I'm going to delete this. This requirement here realizes this requirement, realization. Or you could say that there's a form of aggregation. Go over here, aggregation as a whole, aggregation as a part. And I'll have a video that talks about associations and all of these, but we're going to go aggregation to part. We're going to start that. Now you notice I went from here to here. I have something called traceability turned on, right? And you remember how to turn on traceability. We're going to go to the all windows in here and we just select trace and it turns on traceability. Again, start, design, trace, right? And you very quickly get to the window I'm showing over in my lower right. This is where I like to keep it, as I've told you in previous videos. So let's select this element and look at the story that we're telling. We're saying that content management system is part of the ability. That's not a true statement. That's a false statement. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to draw, let's do it this way, in part. Now I've got the open diamond here. I'm selecting this. Content management is composed of the ability to publish. That is a true statement. If we were to use realization, and let me draw a line here, this realizes this. And again, I'll cover this more in detail. I'm just doing this very quickly because this is important to this exercise. So now with traceability, I'm saying content management implements the ability to publish. That's a true statement, but that's not how I want to model my relevance, my relationships in this particular exercise. And there's a lot more. There's trace, it's dependent on. You can play around as you're going through this video, as you're going forward. So I want to say that this is an aggregation in part of, so I'm going to do the same thing for each one of these, all right? Very quickly. If I was to do as a whole, like this, it draws the aggregation this way, right? And if I was to use a solid diamond aggregation, which I'm not sure I can with the tools that are here, but I know I can force it. I can basically say, hey, without a content, let me get rid of that. Without a content management system, these things don't exist. Well, that's not a true statement, or at least at this particular point. So let me keep going. I digress. And let's draw the relevance. I already drew that one in part. So now we've got relevance, all right? Now, while we're brainstorming with the team, we want to bring up some visual aids because we've got questions about this work management platform. What is this? Is it another web interface? Is it another, tool on the desktop for your users? What is that, right? So what I like to do when I'm having these brainstorms, I'm just going to grab these assumptions. I'm going to hit Control C and copy. I'm going to go over here where I've got one screen element, and I'm going to hit Shift and Insert key. It's a very fast way of bringing these in. It tells me that it's coming out of this package or folder because I've got namespace turned on. Let's double click in here and show you that. Diagrams, I've got show namespace, so I get to see those things. You can certainly turn them off by going here to, let me bring this back up again. There we go, diagrams, and I can turn this off. And as soon as I hit OK, namespaces are gone. But in this particular case, I want namespaces on, diagrams, show namespaces, right? And we'll get into the other things, fully qualified and all that stuff later, right? So we're talking about a content management system, right? So this is going to realize this. Let's check our content management implements whatever this UX, UI, this screen is, right? But what's this? So we're going to bring it in. What's this work management platform? What is this? Right? So this evidently is relevant to this. So I'm going to set a dependency. Click on this. Work management is dependent on the work management platform, right? And if you were to right click on this and reverse this direction, you're stating that this scope item is needed by the work management platform. Both of them are true statements in data relevance, and we'll get into data relevance and reporting and analytics and all that stuff much later on. So the requirement basically is that this is associated to this, but I don't know whether it's in part, to whole, or whatever, right? I'm just going to do this for now because I'm stating the content management system is composed of the ability to integrate with this work management platform. That's a true statement. And then this requirement is basically stating that it implements this, implements this. So whatever this is, it has to be relatable to this. And in this particular case, I'm just going to use dependency. So we're just stating that screen one, I'm just going to call this new platform. Call it anything you want. We're just ideating right now. They might have a cute name for it already. We'll use it. So we've got a new platform right here that's realized by this requirement or assumption, and that it depends on this work management platform. Is that a true statement? No. Let's right click on it. Let's reverse this direction and then write it again. New platform needed by the work management platform. So this is a very quick way to learn relevance, associations, what association types you use in UML. Very quick way to do this, all right? So now we're starting to form an idea for our needs assessment around what the project is, all right? So the clients may tell us, this is an existing platform, this is a new platform. So I got an asterisk, let me save, and let's launch needs assessment and start building or forming our needs assessment. This is an iterative exercise. We're going to go round and round this entire life cycle in this project in Sparx Enterprise Architect. Now, before we move, I'm going to go back over to ideation. Before we move to needs assessment and we're working in iteration, let's create a Kanban. All right, so I'm on the ideation namespace right here. We're going to go to construct. We're going to go to Kanban, and we are going to start a new. The first one, you can read the help tip right there. We just want to prioritize our work. You could go to backlog, but I usually start with new standard Kanban. So I'm going to go ahead and hit new. And then I'm going to F2 because I want to give this, I want to call this, instead of basic, I want to call this priorities or ranking. Just give it a name, meaningful name that you can get back to it. So I got low, medium, and high. And when you're looking at these scope items, I'm going to close UX for a moment and go to ideation. When you're looking at these scope items, let me click on this first one. You can come in and set the priority low, medium, high, right? So the client's going to go through and is tell me this is high. Whether I like it or not, they're just going through, because you're going to go through them. You're going to say, all right, out of these scope items, these assumptions, how high of a priority are each one of these, right? And of course, the clients most of the time will tell you, well, all of them are high. So it's very fast for you to create a Kanban, low, medium, and high, and critical in here. And then the assumptions that you've gathered so far, and it's just these 10, right? So I'm going to Control C and copy these. I'm going to go over to my Kanban, and I'm just going to hit Shift Insert, right? Now, it didn't necessarily put them, where they need to be, but it inserted them into this area because that's where I inserted them, right? So you can always, move them somewhere else, right? So we want to do one at a time. So the first one is content management. It's low, medium, or high. They're going to say, well, that's high. So we're going to drag it over here, move it to high. Integrate with work management platform, low, medium, or high. They're going to say that's critical. Right or wrong, you're listening to them. You're brainstorming, okay? We're not in serious requirement solicitation and development mode yet. User experience. Well, that's medium, right? So we're going to move this over here, put it in medium. Performance, well, that's high, right? And so this is a very fast way. Now, again, they may tell you everything is high or even critical, but you're just starting, because how you determine in the end whether things are going to be delivered or not, or have a certain priority, is going to be based on 3 architectural value chain propositions. One is, you ask the client, in order, what is the motivation or priority of these 3 things? Cost, schedule, performance, right? So they tell you, well, we don't have a lot of money, so budget or cost is number 1. Well, as you're going through the exercising and you're determining through software estimating and assessing that it's going to exceed a threshold of cost, it's going to exceed the schedule. Like this one item, this requirement, this capability is going to take longer than the first delivery date that they want. That could impact a requirement and where it falls as far as low, medium, or high, or even critical, right? And then, of course, performance is another factor. So we'll talk more about that when we get into requirements engineering and we start going through this example project. For now, we're just going to leave these where they fall. Nothing's low out of what they've given us so far out of the 10. So we have a critical. I would have assumed that content management would have been critical, but that's not what they said. You know, they said it's high priority, right? Kind of interesting. So when we're going to the needs assessment is basically looking at current mode and future mode, understanding the gap between what they have today and what they want tomorrow. All right, we're moving from ideation to needs assessment. We have a blank work area. We're using the analysis toolbox diagram type, and we're able to bring in actors. So what we want to start with the needs assessment is we want to identify all of the actors. So of course we have a user, right? We don't want to get carried away. We could have, once you choose an item out of the toolbox, it remembers it. So if I hit control and left click, I get another actor. You know, it might be customer, it might be legal department, it might be business, analyst, really, Tim? Analyst, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, I guess. You want to know all of the actors, okay? Especially the human actors. You know, the term actor, because it has a stick figure, not necessarily a human. It could be a machine. It could be a virtual AI bot, but we're going to focus on humans because we want to understand all of the actors involved here. So I'm just going to type in one more. I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but you get an inventory of all of the actors that are part of this particular project, right? Once you get an inventory of that, you can build an actor catalog. So we're just going to do this for now. Over in the needs, we're going to create another package. It's going to be blank, right? We don't need a diagram in it. And we're literally going to call it actor catalog. Call it anything you want, but this is what I'm going to call it. And as we're inventorying our actors, I'm going to move them into the actor catalog. Now I have namespace turned on, so it's telling me what folder it's in. Now that kind of pollutes everything. So I like to go to diagram and I like to turn off namespaces, all right? Because I want this to be clean, but I want a namespace for actors. Now there's lots of reasons why you need to collect an inventory of the various actors. And one way that we look at these are roles, right? When you get into the identity management, access management portion of this delivery exercise, you need to understand the roles of each one of the actors that are accessing the system. And in this particular case, we have two platforms. We've got a work management platform and we have some sort of content platform. Still not quite sure what that is. Is it an e-commerce? Is it sales? Is it just a knowledge base for internal users and not necessarily customers? These are all things that we get when we're doing our understanding what the ideation is, the ideas of the stakeholders is, versus what they want to implement, and what do they have today, and what do they want tomorrow. All right, that's all I'm going to discuss in this session. In our next session, we're going to dive deeper into needs assessment. We're going to do really cool things like deal with a gap analysis. A gap analysis is essentially, we're going to use the ideation package. Right now, you can change it, create other gap analysis views and name them, but we're going to use the entire namespace for the target architecture, and we're going to use the entire namespace for the baseline architecture because we're trying to do a gap. So you'll notice that we brought in the assumptions, everything, including the blank ones, right? When we're doing a gap analysis, we're able to determine, this thing's getting big, missing requirements and what's new, right? What's new as we're doing this gap analysis across these. Now I want to move these requirements out because I only want to focus on the ones that we've already done. I do not want to focus on these, but I don't want to lose them, right? So in the next session, I'll talk about what the best practices are and how to do that for more effectively doing a needs assessment and a gap analysis. So thanks very much for watching. Comment down below on what you think so far, what you're looking for in future sessions, concerns that you have. I look forward. Thanks again. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.